The longest government shutdown in history has come to an end, with almost no one satisfied with the final outcome after costing nearly $101 billion. In the early days of October 2025, the United States federal government ground to a halt. As Congress failed to pass the necessary appropriations, hundreds of thousands of federal employees were furloughed, vital services paused, and an economic engine that powers one-third of the world's GDP momentarily sputtered. What followed was not just political standoff or bureaucratic gridlock. It became a costly economic event that will ripple through the U.S. economy for years. With weekly losses of around $15 billion and an estimated permanent hit to real GDP of upward of $11 billion, the shutdown will leave no winners and plenty of frustration. This video explores the origins, the costs, the knock-on effects, and the long-term implications of the 2025 shutdown. On October 1, 2025, the federal government entered into a shutdown because Congress and the White House failed to secure funding for key agencies and programs. The story isn't simply about funding lapses. It's about an economy built on the assumption that government operations run uninterrupted. With agencies closed or operating in a limbo state, federal workers were furloughed, paychecks delayed, and ripple effects began almost immediately. According to the Congressional Budget Office, under a 6-week shutdown scenario, delays in federal spending and compensation would lead to lower real GDP in the fourth quarter of 2025. The stakes were high from the outset. Every week of shutdown means lost services, paused contracts, suppressed spending by federal workers, and private sector spillover effects. A memo from the Council of Economic Advisors warned of a weekly GDP loss of about $15 billion and more than 40,000 additional unemployed individuals if the shutdown dragged on. The shutdown's immediate costs were jaw-dropping, with estimates of $15 billion lost per week. After 6 weeks, the total temporary loss reached roughly $90 billion in economic activity. This figure covers output that will be recovered once government functions resume, but it still amounts to a massive hit. Some firms and workers will bounce back, but the pause still stings. In parallel, federal workers missed paychecks totaling around $16 billion during the shutdown, according to internal estimates, a sum that would later be reimbursed, but in the meantime caused hardship and dampened consumer spending. The knock-on effect ricocheted through local businesses dependent on federal wages and contracts. In short, production paused, services delayed, consumption deferred. Slivers of the economy that rely on government operations, contractors, state agencies, travel and tourism, felt the brunt early. The permanent damage. What won't be recovered? While the bigger headline numbers capture benign recovery, a more serious cost is what will never be recovered. The CBO estimates the permanent economic loss could be between $7 billion and $14 billion, depending on the duration of the shutdown. In the case of a 6-week shutdown, the estimated permanent loss of real GDP is around $11 billion. In the travel industry alone, losses of approximately $2.6 billion were estimated over the 6-week period. Output simply never made up. These losses stem from work never performed, business opportunities missed, delayed investment, and confidence shaken. While temporary effects rebound, this lost output permanently lowers the economy's baseline. Services that didn't occur remain unfulfilled, and that's a cost no amount of back pay can erase. Private sector spillover and sectoral shocks. The shutdown didn't just affect federal agencies, it cascaded into the private sector. Industries that rely on government contracts, procurement, regulatory actions, or federal payments found themselves squeezed. For example, travel and tourism were hit hard. Hotels and airlines faced fewer bookings and lower demand as federal workers' incomes dried up. and federal air traffic and oversight agencies curtailed operations. Business confidence also took a hit. When government data reporting stalls or federal workload and payments become unpredictable, firms delay investment, hiring slows, and some projects get shelved. The broader economy felt the chill. Not everything is captured in the headline GDP numbers, but the micro impacts compound. The shutdown created uncertainty not just for businesses and workers, but for policymakers. With federal operations paused or delayed, key economic data releases were postponed, hampering the Federal Reserve's ability to assess labor and inflation trends in real-time. Economics firms warned that absence of data could distort policy decisions and raise the risk of mistimed interest rate moves. On the fiscal side, delayed spending means government outlays were lower than they would be otherwise during the shutdown, but many of those will be made up later. Still, the net effect is that federal spending flow was disrupted, which rippled through tax receipts, contractor activity, and state budgets. The shutdown thus echoes beyond its 6-week span. Behind the big numbers are real people. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees were furloughed or worked without pay while still being expected to deliver services. Some used savings, took loans, or delayed bill payments. Others supported local economies. Businesses, restaurants, rental units suddenly saw incomes drop. Moreover, localities with heavy government employment felt the shock acutely. Consumer spending fell, small business cash flow tightened, and some local contractors saw payments delayed. Although most of the lost wages were reimbursed when funding resumed, the uncertainty and hardship left scars, especially for lower-income workers and those living paycheck to paycheck. President Donald Trump on Wednesday signed legislation ending the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, hours after the House of Representatives voted to restart disrupted food assistance, pay hundreds of thousands of federal workers, and revive a hobbled air traffic control system. The Republican-controlled chamber passed the package by a vote of 222 to 209, with Trump's support largely keeping his party together in the face of vehement opposition from House Democrats, who are angry that a long standoff launched by their Senate colleagues failed to secure a deal to extend federal health insurance subsidies. Trump's signature on the bill, which cleared the Senate earlier in the week, will bring federal workers idled by the 43-day shutdown back to their jobs starting as early as Thursday. Although just how quickly full government services and operations will resume is unclear. "We can never let this happen again," Trump said in the Oval Office during a late-night signing ceremony that he used to criticize Democrats. "This is no way to run a country." The 2025 U.S. government shutdown emerges as a case study in how political standoffs can morph into economic damage. While much of the lost activity, an estimated $90 billion, will be recovered once normal operations resume, the more sobering reality is the $11 billion or more of output that is gone forever. The economy's baseline has shifted downward, and the cost extends beyond numbers. It touches confidence, credibility, and resilience. For policymakers, the lesson is stark. Government funding continuity matters, not just for internal operations, but for the broader economy that depends on it. Every additional week of shutdown means deeper cuts to growth, heightened risk to households, and greater private sector disruption. The shuttering of federal work is more than a bureaucratic hiccup. It is a drain on the nation's economic engine. As the services resume and workers return, the process of recovery underway will require more than just back pay. It will require restoring trust in institutions, confidence in government as an economic partner, and the prevention of future shutdowns. Because in the end, the bill has been handed to everyday Americans, not for political theater, but for the cost of inaction. The shutdown may have ended, but its echoes will be felt for years to come.